Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did. Because you can see right where the buffing wheel went.
Oh, like they mean they went.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see where they
Yikes.
stumped off. Ugh. Yeah, definitely.
Well, this is the damn Yankee rifle you load on Sunday and shoot all week. This is an 1866 Henry, and it's a tale of what you do not do to really historic guns and what you do to them. And in this particular case, as you can probably tell even in that camera, most of the brass on this gun has been buffed. Ah, God, we really wish they hadn't done it. This is one of 1,000 Henrys that was bought by the DC, the District of Columbia, what would you call that? Militia. And it went around, did a few things, and from what I'm told, the Confederates actually captured this rifle, and that's what it's doing down here. There are some things going on with it. We got to go inside it and clean it. And we've had guns like this apart before, and we're just going to show you the toggle link system and why I think they never went to cartridges much longer than a 4440 in these things. And everybody tells you it's pressure. Yeah, it's a lot of that, but I think it's a lot more. So let's go follow Alice, get on down the rabbit hole, and take this really interesting, historically significant gun apart, dig all the dirt out of it, and investigate lubrication as a maintenance concept. Yeah, here we go. I've noticed two things right off the bat that I want to go after here the hardest. And I got to highlight this so you can see it. Let me highlight it here, right there. There's a nick here and here. I didn't get it. Hold on. There it is. There it is. And those two nicks were from somebody trying to pry this plate off. The problem is, let me roll up this way. I got it right there. The problem is that this plate is dovetailed right there. This plate is dovetailed here and back here. There's a dovetail in it. So when we pull this screw out, this plate slides off. It doesn't come off this way. That's the first thing we looked at. But the real problem we're going to have with this gun, and I got to turn this around a little bit. Hang on a minute. There we go. You see this space right here where my index finger is? This hammer should be sitting in battery back about here somewhere, which tells me that when this has been dry fired so many times that it destroyed the head of the firing pin component up here in the front end. There's no real bolt to this thing. It just, the whole stack just runs into the back of the cartridge and sets it off. And we've got a couple of drawings. We'll show you that here in a minute. But for right now, I want to get the side plate off this thing. So what I'm going to do is trap it right there and then find an appropriately sized screwdriver. The heads of these screws have been gone after pretty hard. This whole gun's been apart a couple of times, and I'm wondering if it was apart by someone that had actually understood it. But all right, here we go. Is that's just a tad too thick. I'll get my hand out of here in a minute and show you what I'm talking about. No, it's not too thick. There's just a lot of crud down inside the screw head. So before you try to put torque on one of these old guns, you got to dig. See all that mung right there? Yeah, you see that mung right there on the end of the screwdriver? And right there, you got to dig all of this dirt out of these screw heads on these historically significant guns because you're trying to not put any torque. So look at how much mung I'm digging out of there. And that's keeping the screwdriver's head from getting down in there. Now, there we go. Now we've got full bite on it. And then I usually give it a tap or two just to set it, okay? Now what we don't want to do is take the screw head and shove it open this way, because what'll happen is you'll break one side of this off. So there's a limit to how thick you can have this. And then we're going to see if we get lucky and we can break this thing loose. There we go, we got lucky. So usually I'm grabbing a screwdriver with my fingers and just squeezing my hand shut like this. And that's how I'm applying all that torque with all that vertical force coming in through my thumb. So we'll come up till it clicks right there. Okay, so there's a click, which means now I can come up underneath it with a punch and I can gently drive it out. Where's the hole, Mark? Gotta find the hole. There it is. I was off by a little bit. There we go, right there. So we get up underneath that and just kind of lift this screw out, you see? Now don't pull the punch out, because a lot of this stuff is spring loaded. So you saw it all move, and you don't want to pull that punch out until you have control of the parts. If you just jerk this out, the thing explodes. Or it doesn't. You don't know that. But why find out the hard way? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that being the case, we have to ask ourselves which way to come off. And it's just allowing me to come off with my fingers. We're going to go there. We see verdigris everywhere. We see all this green garbage. And that's the copper and the brass leaching out. We have verdigris here. We have verdigris all over the backside of this plate. You can see, there we go, where our color rendition is. It's all green. That gives us a look at the inside of the gun. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick this screw back in there. Maybe I'm not. Hold on a minute. I've got a pointed spud here. I'm being very careful I don't get down on this brass at all. And I'm going to gather this lever back in and see if it's going to let me put the screw back through it. Yeah, it's not, and I don't want it that bad. So we're going to do it this way. Okay. We can see the basic toggle action here where the lever is riding down through the inside of a slot cut in this piece, and it's breaking the toggle and pulling it backwards, all right? So if you look at this, you'll see how much space there is right here. See all that space? Right there. I'm looking up at the monitor when I'm saying this. So all of that, as we've learned a long time ago, right now, this pin is setting headspace, and this gun is not all the way locked up. This lever, this pin has to be above a line drawn through this one and this one. There's a lot of stuff that had to happen correctly. So even with, you can see here, this is like a half round bearing right here. You have a half round bearing right here, a bearing in a brass frame, and then you've got a pin, and that bolt thrust has to come through all of that and back into the frame. So the abutment's back here, the bolt face is up here. So this is the recoil system. Now, a Luger is set up just like this. A 1908 Maxim machine gun is set up just like this. And they're all running longer cartridges with a lot more pressure. But in order to do that, this box would get huge. And that's why I don't think, that's my other theory, was it really wasn't the pressure of these cartridges, it's how long they were. And what it would take to lock against that. Okay, so these should just come out. So let me see if I can get away with that. Hang on a minute. This whole gun stacks. All right, this stacks, and that lever came off, and this pin has been replaced. That pin's been replaced and ground off flat, and if I get this right there, you can see it where it's been ground on. Okay, so this is a pretty loosey-goosey setup right here. See that? And that's not supposed to be that loose. And when this comes up and locks, this almost looks like somebody made a new one of these, or they brazed it together. And I'm not banging on this gun. It's still historically significant. And someone did the maintenance, but when they did it, they didn't really understand how the gun works, how it was locked together, and they got us in kind of a world of hurt here. That was the first one. The second one is, we're going to take a second and I'm going to polish this hammer face. Here we go. Up a little bit more. Okay. So you see how that's silver? I'm just I'm going to drop the hammer on these two little bites right here. And we're going to take that brass and push that back down right there and get rid of those two nicks. And when I got all the way done with that, what I did was, you get the light right there. There they are. They're gone now. That's now a straight line across the top, and those are gone, and we didn't have to hit it very hard to get that to happen, right? All right, we're gonna have to change camera angles here. We'll be right back. I said we were gonna go away, but then I saw something right as we were resetting. You see the shim right here? That shim was in there in an attempt to make this link push further forward into the bolt right here. So that shim was actually up in there. To be fair, this gun's made out of brass, and it's 165 years old, and they hadn't figured out how to do it yet. But I would be willing to bet you that this gun went down just because it wore, slapped the heck out. Up at the nose of this, the follower is brought all the way up and rolled to one side, and it's loaded by just dropping the rounds in the tube, and then when you're all done, you let this down. Now, the other thing of note is, hang on a minute, right here, you see that lock popping up and down? That lock goes into this groove, so when you roll it around and you set that in, this is locked until you lift that up, okay? So to take this apart, we're at a point with this gun, I don't think I'm gonna take it much further apart because it's not gaining us anything. The bore is trash. The crown is hosed. The links are messed up. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. The thing that DQs this gun's locking system is, if you see this line right here, this pedal and the other pedal were hand cut, and then a pin was driven through right there. You can see that. So this hand cut ends here, it ends there, and then this is a pedal, and that's a pedal, and it's not supporting the load the way it's supposed to. So since only one, because as we can see here, the one that's unadulterated doesn't move, right? The one that is adulterated shakes quite a lot. See all that slop? That's unacceptable in a locking system. This, like I said, the locking system in this particular gun, you can make it longer. So this is what's left of a 73 and 4440. And we look here and you can see just how much shorter the block is lifting up to 44 Henry than the block that's this long to lift up to 4440. So the gun begins to get exponentially longer. So we can imagine that in like 4570 or 5070, this lifter would have to be the physical length of a 5070 round, and that's not going to get that done. Here's a Marlin safety rifle right here, and okay, here we have the bolt, right? Let me set this other one down. Hang on a minute. Okay, and then there is a block that goes up inside the receiver. Get this light over here. There we go. And you can see in here what they're doing now. Instead of locking it with a toggle, they're locking it on this surface right here and around on the inside. You see this vertical surface here? So when you put this locking block up in there, see, that block is just coming up out of the receiver, and that's sliding into that recess in there. So when you've got all this in here, that's how you're locking it shut, and there's no toggles jumping around. That was Marlin's way of doing it, and then Winchester just did it this way. Let me get up in front here. Winchester did it this way, which is just dropping the vertical blocks into the mortise that's cut in the side of the gun here. So this is a much better way to lock it shut. And now all the lever's got to do is pull the bolt back. It has nothing to do with keeping the gun lock shut. That also opened up all this box space to allow you to put a loading gate in, allow you to have a vertical lifter that could handle longer and longer cartridges. And ultimately this culminates in an 1886 the ultimate expression of that, of course, is in 1886. And they got this bolt to open up long enough to clear a 4570, and the lever is still only halfway down. So we just compare the size difference here. Hang on a minute, I'm just going to shut that and lay that right there. And then we look at a 4440, well, 32 WCF, but that's a 3220. And you can see the difference in the size of the gun, right? All they did was kept scaling it up to go to bigger and bigger and bigger cartridges. So this is that's a 3220 bolt compared to a 4570 bolt. You can see the difference in length, but it scales. The lever system doesn't scale. So yeah, it's not set up to handle the cartridge power, but the thing is that in a black powder world, in order to increase power, you need to have more and more and more gunpowder. And that meant a longer and longer and longer cartridge. And the lever system wasn't going to handle that. So we can see that there's threads on the end of this. And the end of this firing pin is gone. It's missing out of the gun. You see those pock marks? That was somebody trying to jump these threads up and open them up a little bit so that it would all stay. This gun didn't die. It just slapped the hell out. All that slop that was going in and out. So you see that notch right there. That notch is supposed to be right there, and then the extractor fits down in that. And then there's a hole drilled through the receiver that you access this and drive a pin in, and that was all sloppy and messed up. That screwed it up. Then there's the other problem of, if you watch this thing is not concentric. You see it wobbling around in the middle there? So yeah, now the bend is down, and now the bend is up, and now the bend is down, because this thing had just been tattooed by an enormous mainspring. And I mean, this thing is designed to whap the piss out of this. Well, when you're dry firing, especially rimfire guns, this is the damage that occurs in the back end. You see those two points in there? You couldn't get a cartridge in this thing if you tried. I've got two cartridges for this gun. We got a long and flat, we got a short. They're $50 a piece, and I'm not going to scar them up, just to show you why you don't dry fire rimfires. That energy of that mainspring has got to go somewhere. It's got to go somewhere. So dry firing guns in general shouldn't be done. And I understand there's a training aspect to that, but all those have usually got some sort of accommodation in them. They have the hammer dropped on them all the time. And not this. This was never designed for that. And you know, when you go dry, there's nothing keeping the hammer from falling the last time on an empty chamber if you don't realize that you've gone dry. Even that's enough to damage the gun. It's enough to cause an asymmetrical load on this thing. So here you got the two firing pins, and you got an asymmetrical load on it where it would be moving. Let me get my hands in front of this here. Yeah, it would be moving side to side, walking this off. This whole thing is how these guns die. They were just never designed to have all that wear and slop taken up in them, and after a while they just go out of service. Had the bore on this thing been nice, and the bore's not. The bore looks like it's been fired with black powder and corrosive primers for years. But had the bore been nice, this would not be a significantly difficult thing to turn on a lathe. And we would have made a center fire firing pin for it, and then size the cartridges, and we would have just been able to make cartridges for this thing and actually run it with black powder. You wouldn't run this thing with smokeless, and I don't care what anybody says about smokeless for black loads. Let them screw with that. If it's a black powder gun, it was maybe for 1892, shoot it with black powder. We could have made another firing pin for this. We'd have made a head. It would have gone in, screwed in, had a point sticking out. It would have been relatively easy to do, and we could have shot it. But we're at that point now where we just can't. The decision, the maintenance decisions to put this gun where it is were made by people other than us. So we're just going to cut this thing off, make it a well-provenanced, very out of service wall hanger. The last thing I want to show you here is the actual travesty. Brass, patina does not kill brass. Patina kills steel. Patina on steel is a layer of rust that's slowly eating away at it. Brass self-shields and it just kind of dies. So the problem was, when they shined this gun up, if we take a really good, hard look, we're shining here, we're gonna roll the spot over and boom. See that shine die? Because when they buffing wheeled this thing, you can see right where the buffing wheel ran up onto the wood. Buffing wheel runs up onto the wood here, over the top, down around the back. And then if you look up the front, here's the sheen, and boom, the sheen's gone because they didn't even take the stock off of this thing when it got buffed. So some of the stuff the 1950s collectors were screaming about not wire wheeling stuff down to the white and not buffing stuff was actually true. And this particular gun, the original finish, kind of got compromised a little bit because of that. Don't do this. If you've got to buff something, take the wood off. And it was 2 screws. There are 2 screws that get this wood off, and just take the wood off. I haven't put this gun back together again yet because I've got to talk to its owner about where we're going to go with it. I know he didn't know. And we're just going to say, you know, do we fume the brass and turn it back dark again? What do we do? What he contracted for and what I've got to do to it aren't the same thing. And you don't go hitting, beginning gunsmiths don't hit your customers over the head with things you haven't talked about yet. And you're going to run into guys that can afford it. And even though they can afford it, you need to have that personal contract with them. Have a little integrity. So anyway, we went from this, which was an 1860, to this 1886 monster in 26 years. It took them 26 years to hit the apex of big bore black powder development. This gun is so stout, it made the jump into the smokeless era. Others did not. Other designs did not. So the only 2 that made it into the smokeless era were the Marlin safety rifle in the 1886. And after that, you know, the problem with lever guns is as this magazine depletes, the center of mass of the weapon moves aft, and these sights are only good at 1 loading. And after that, you're off in elevation. The tubular magazines, once dented, are useless. They did a lot of work with these things out west, but at the end of the day, it was a developmental dead end, and it kind of ended. Anyway, if you come into possession of an older gun, just slow down and think a little bit. Be sure of your target and beyond. What is that buffing wheel going to touch after it touches what I want it to touch? This was not the longest video in the world because I'm a little gun shy at dumping a whole bunch of man hours into something that somebody else is just going to arbitrarily throw in the garbage. We're working here to back things up and put things in other places, but there's a lot of variables and a lot of moving parts. We'll let you know. This particular gun that we did this video on, I thought we were going to be able to go a lot deeper and do a lot more on it. And when we got it apart, we weren't going to be able to go there. So I'm just trying to give you guys something useful out of it, and you know, we'll try again another day. Thank you very much. We appreciate your kindness and patience, and we'll see you guys in the comment section. Really appreciate it. Now we can say thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure.